What's up guys, Asian here again with another build video, and today we're going to be going over the Stamina Warden Healer. You guys all knew this was coming, and it had to be updated eventually, so here it is. So this is the Stamina Warden Healer. Wardens were introduced in Morrowind, as you guys likely remember. This was about a year ago now, and when people were first playing around the Morrowind PTS with the Warden, and they kind of realized that stamina the Wardens had a stamina heal. There was a heal that actually used stamina. And so that got kind of some people's minds ticking away, trying to see if a stamina healer was actually viable for endgame content, for PvE content. So that was kind of where the birth of the Stamina Warden kind of came in. They were just basically trying to see whether or not it was even possible to do. And so ever since Morrowind, there have been several Stamina Warden healer builds out there. I released one myself that have at the very least proven to be somewhat viable. You're not going to be getting high scores with these builds. You're not going to have an easy time finding a guild that will take you in as a Stamina Warden healer. But by all means, it is not a bad thing. You can definitely clear vet content with it. You can definitely clear things like halls and maw. Just because, what we realized was that for support roles, it's more about knowing the fight, knowing the mechanic, knowing the trials. That kind of plays a larger role in your success than the actual whether using magic or stamina to heal. That being said, though, the stamina healer does bring a lot of difficulties with it. You're making a ton of compromises, and so that's why they really haven't taken off too much, except for kind of a novelty, fun build to run when you're bored of maybe running a Templar healer or something like that. So we'll be going over all of these weaknesses, kind of what we're doing to try to address them, and so kind of how you want to play a Stamina Warden healer. I personally do not have one, but I have seen some people run Stamina Warden healers very successfully through some vet content. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started here. So let's start off first with here. Now, the problem with healing as a Stamina Ward is your monster helm sets right now are fairly limited. So there's really only two that I would recommend picking up. First one's going to be Sentinel Rkugamz, which you see here. So when you heal a friendly target, you have a 10% chance to summon a Dormer Spider that heals for 1291 health and restores 524 stamina to you and your allies within 5 meters every 1 second for 8 seconds. This effect can occur once every 15 seconds. So this kind of addresses two things. So first of all, it addresses the kind of lack of healing that you're able to do compared to a magic healer. You don't really have that many healing abilities that use stamina. So Sentinel Rkugamz helps that out a little bit by giving you a little bit of a small heal over time. It also kind of addresses your relatively lower sustain as a stamina healer. You can see here with the regen, we're sitting at 1633, which is lower than what I would like. So for those of you guys who watch my other healer videos, you know that I prefer to have 2000 or so magicka regen unbuffed. So this is already 400 below what I would like to see. So having that additional stamina regen is nice for you, and it's obviously nice for any sort of stamina DPS, your tanks. So that's one monster helm set that I recommend picking up. The other one is going to be, find it, Earthgore. The Earthgore, when you heal a friendly target that is under 50% health, you conjure a pool of punching blood underneath them, which soaks up one enemy placed effect instantly and heals all friendly targets in the area for, in this case, 948 health over 6 seconds. This effect can occur once every 35 seconds. So again, very helps with the kind of burst healing that we don't really have. The downside is it can proc only every 35 seconds. So it procs once, you have 29 seconds until it can proc again. So that's kind of the downside of running Earthgore. So the reason why these two sets are the ones that I only recommend is because of the one piece. They both add 2% healing done. So Bogdan adds magicka, which doesn't really help you too much. So I prefer Earthgore and Rkugamz just because the 2% healing done at the very least is agnostic as to whether you are magicka or stamina healer. Now, that being said, you can definitely still run Bogdan if you would like. The extra magicka does actually kind of help out one of our weaknesses, which is lower uptime on combat prayer and fewer orbs. So the extra magicka does help out a little bit in that regard. But I just find that you already have a little bit lower sustain already because your stamina regen is going to be a little bit lower. So why not help that out with Sentinel Rkugamz? Moving on for our first 5-piece, so another big weakness of stamina healers is that you don't really have a lot of sets. A lot of the healing sets in the game are light armor, so in order to make use of them as a stamina healer, you're going to need to basically use jewelry and weapons. So that kind of leaves something to be desired in terms of medium armor healing sets. There's not that many out there, but there's 2 that I want to point out here. First one is the one that we have here. It's called Powerful Assault. So this is a Telvar set. So basically what this means is you can buy the pieces from the Imperial Sewers using Telvar. Alternatively, you can just buy it off the Guild Traders. So this is a medium armor set, so it plays very well with the whole stamina healer kind of theme you have going on here. So it gives you max health, max stamina, weapon damage, and then when you cast an assault ability, you increase the weapon and spell damage of up to 4 friendly targets within 10 meters by 164 for 15 seconds. Now, this is clearly not as strong as Spell Power here or Olorime, and we're actually using Olorime as our second 5-piece. But it does stack with Major Courage, so that's kind of an advantage there. The downside is you can only apply it to 4 friendly targets for 15 seconds, so if you think about it, that's only a third of the raid group, and you kind of have to make sure you're hitting the DPS, not the tanks or the other healer, mainly because if you recast it before Powerful Assault buff completely runs out, it'll actually rebuff it. I'm not 100% sure if you need it to run completely out or if it's after like 10 seconds or something like that, but from what I've heard, you can actually just reapply the Powerful Assault buff to the same people over and over again if you're not letting it run out. So that's one of the downsides of running Powerful Assault. There is another medium armor set that could be used as a healing set, and that's going to be Hircine's. So Hircine's adds stamina regen, max stamina regen, so this helps out with our regen problems. And then the 5-piece reduces the cost of your stamina abilities by 4% for you and up to 11 other people within 28 meters of you. So this is basically a stamina version of Wormhole. So if you have a lot of stamina DPS in your group, Hircine's actually not that bad in order to help sustain. So much like Worm is a sustain set for Magicka, Hircine's is a sustain set for stamina DPS. So Hircine's there is actually pretty nice to have. So if you do want to run a stamina healer, I would recommend picking up these 2 sets, because these 2 sets are going to be what's going to be on your body. You're either going to be wearing Hircine's or you're going to be wearing Powerful Assault. These 2 are the only medium armor sets that would fulfill kind of a healer / support role. Now, the other armor sets in the game that you typically wear for healers, so Olorime, like we have here, Spell Power Cure, Mending, Worm, those are all going to be basically jewelry and weapons. So if you want to have something like Worm active on both bars, you will need to have 2 weapons, 2 Worm weapons, and then the Worm jewelry as well. So that's kind of what you kind of have to deal with here. Now, you need to have at least Olorime. I don't think, personally, that you should be running anything else besides Olorime, so I have the perfect version here, and that's just because you still want to have a Major Courage buff. Now, if you have another healer, if you have a second healer running Olorime, you could make the argument that you don't need to run it, which is fine, but you need to make sure that your other healer is capable of running Olorime. Otherwise, you are going to have to run it. So if your other healer is able to run Olorime, then you can run something like Worm Cult or Mending or any of the other typical standard healing sets, like Drogold's Guidance or something even. But otherwise, you will have to wear Olorime or at the very least Spell Power Cure. So we have Olorime Jewelry, so I have the perfect version here. You can go for the imperfect version if you don't have a group that's able to clear that Cloud Rest. The jewelry does only drop from Cloud Rest +2 on Vet. Or if you want the perfect version, if you want the imperfect version, just finish Vet Cloud Rest, not Vet, normal Cloud Rest for +2 or higher. So the difference is going to be that 5-piece effect, which adds max Magicka. But the 2, 3, and 4-piece, 2 and 4-piece just adds Magicka regen, which is actually going to be useful for us because we still want to have as much common player uptime, as many orbs as we possibly can. And the 3-piece Minor Aegis is always going to be useful just because it reduces the damage you take in dungeons and trials. And obviously, the 5-piece doesn't change between imperfect and perfect. It still gives you that circle with the Major Courage buff. Now for our weapons, on the front bar we have Olorime's Perfect Bow, infused with the Weakening enchant. You can go with dual wield if you would like, but I prefer to go with the bow, just because Endless Hail will be able to make sure you keep on proccing that Weakening enchant. And then on our back bar we have the Asylum's Perfected Restoration Staff. So again, one of the weaknesses that we have here with the stamina build is that we don't have a stamina version of Comet Prayer. There's no way to provide Minor Berserk to the group that uses stamina. So we have to use Comet Prayer if we still want to provide good group support, because otherwise it's pretty much unfair for your other healer to have to provide Minor Berserk all by themselves with Comet Prayer. So we are using the Silence Effective Restoration staff to help out our sustain a little bit, because whenever we cast Combat Prayer, it reduces the cost of our healing abilities by 30% if you have Perfect, 27% if you have Imperfect for 3 seconds. And this does help out a lot because Orbs are expensive, and that's another weakness that we can help address by using the Silence staff. We use a Combat Prayer, and then we're able to toss out 2 Orbs within that 3 seconds at a 30% reduced cost. Orbs is definitely very expensive skill, and it's a very important skill because that's the only way you're able to return resources to the group. And just like with Combat Prayer, it's very unfair to make your other healer do all the work, throw out all those orbs for your DPS. So at the very least with Asylum, we can at least provide a couple of orbs here and there in order to help us sustain for our DPS. So now, just like with the normal Magicka healers, you have plenty of options when it comes to traits. You can do Power for additional healing, Infused for stronger enchants, Decisive for faster ultimate gain, Defending for more resistances. So you have a lot of different options here. Enchants too, you do have options. So one of the things with Magicka healers is you're able to run Blockade of Storms for off balance. You can't really do that as stamina DPS, obviously. So we have to rely on Endless Hail in order to proc our enchants. So we have Weakening Enchant. You can go with Crusher if you want to try to maintain that with an Infused Crusher, obviously, if your tank's running that too. You can go with Absorb Stam in order to help out your sustain. You can go with something like Shock in order to help concussed uptime. So you do have several options here and there that you're able to pick out. Alright, moving on to our character sheet here. We are a Redguard, so you have several options when it comes to races. So unlike, you can still be an Argonian if you so choose. Argonians don't have any additional max stamina. They have 3% max magicka, 9% max health, and then 5% healing done and received. Plus they gain back magicka health and stamina with every potion they drink. So even though Argonians do not play very well into the stamina theme, the additional 5% healing done, as well as the max health and the potion passive, they still make good stamina healers, just not the best. Redguards get 10% max stamina, 9% stamina regen, and then they get some additional stamina back whenever they deal damage with a melee attack. So they have the highest combination between max stamina and stamina regen. So that's where we're going with Redguard here. You can go with something like Imperial if you have the Imperial Edition. 12% max health, 10% max stamina. Then you get some additional health every melee attack you do every 5 seconds. You can go with the Wood Elves, which are 6% max stam and 21% stamina regen. So it's kind of up to you which race you want to choose. So Argonians would probably be basically toe-to-toe with Redguard, I'd say, in terms of race choice if you're one of those people who want to maximize the effectiveness of your build. The Argonian 5% healing done also helps out because stamina heals are generally weaker than magicka heals, so the additional 5% healing done will really help out your healing strength. Now for attributes, if you are running Powerful Assault, you don't need any points into health. You can see here we're sitting at 19,900, almost 20,000 health, so that's perfectly fine. In fact, even if you're running Hircines, you don't need any points into health here. So we have 54 into stamina and 10 into magicka. So you could put all 64 points into stamina, but like I mentioned earlier, one of the things we want to address here in this build is try to get as much uptime as we can on Minor Berserk with Combat Prayer, as many orbs out as we can. So we are giving up a little bit of stamina to give ourselves a little bit more magicka, so we're able to continue to provide that Combat Prayer and orbs. But like I said, you can put all your points of stamina if you would like and completely forego orbs and Combat Prayer and just make your other healer do all that work for you. Right, so for our Munda Stone, we're going with the Ritual, so that improves our healing done. So like I mentioned earlier, stamina heals are generally weaker than magicka heals, and they tend to be dots. Heal over time, I should say, not dots. So we do want as many bonuses to our healing done as we can, so that's where the Ritual comes into play here. And then for our food, we're going with purple food, which increases all of our max stats. So that is max health, max magicka, max stamina. Again, that's just to kind of help address the weakness of not having enough Combat Prayer, not having enough orbs out. I just realized I forgot to mention our armor. All it's pretty much the same with Magicka DPS, just with stamina. So divine on all of our small pieces with max stamina enchants, and then infused on a large with prismatic enchants. Then for jewelry, you have several options. I like to stick with 3 infused just because it's a very simple, very easy thing to do. You can go with 3 robust if you'd like for more stamina. You can do those are the main 2 that I would probably recommend. You can go with triune if you want some more, like basically some additional prismatics. In terms of enchants, much like with Magicka, it's basically between regen and damage. So you can basically pick whichever one you want, whichever one fits what you need. And then, of course, you can always run potion cooldown enchants in order to basically give yourself less time between potions. Really helpful as an Argonian if you need additional sustain, but otherwise it is going to be fairly expensive because you will be chugging potions more often than you would without it. So I prefer to stick with stamina or weapon damage just to kind of help out my stats a little bit here. Alright, moving on to our skills, starting off with our front bar. We have Echoing Vigor, so this is one of our heal over time, one of our main healing abilities. Soothing Spore, this is kind of the equivalent of a Breath of Life for a burst heal for stamina, so it doesn't heal for a lot, it's, like I said, stamina heals are not quite as strong with burst healing as it is compared to Magicka healers. So it does also heal more for allies that are within 8 meters of you. So one of the things with the stamina healer is that you're going to be more closer to the group than your typical Magicka healer. Magicka healers can sometimes stay back a little bit, but for a stamina healer you will need to basically be pretty close to the group. Endless Hail. So this is here in order to help make sure our enchants proc on cooldown. Bone Surge. So this basically gives you a 30% damage shield, and it gives a synergy to your allies, which basically gives them a 100% damage shield for 6 seconds, as well as Major Vitality, so that increases the healing received. So this uses stamina, and it's really here mostly for the Major Vitality buff. The shield is very useful, but that Major Vitality buff is really super helpful in order to make you heal stronger, basically. Then we have Green Lotus. This is kind of a small heal over time. You can consider this as a heal over time ability. Basically, whenever you light attack or heavy attack, you restore health to one person. Basically, since you're light waving a lot, you can act as a kind of a heal over time. You basically are healing 1570 health every second or so. And then for our ultimate, we have Enchanted Forest, cheap ulti, pretty good heal, and it also gives you more ultimate if you manage to use it on somebody who's under 50% health. Now for our back bar, we have Combat Prayer. We still don't want to give up Combat Prayer, so that's why we still have it. That Minor Berserk is still very strong. Energy Orbs, for that synergy, we still want to provide that additional resources for our group, so that's why we're running Energy Orbs here. And you can see here that the heal between Combat Prayer and Energy Orbs is significantly weaker compared to on a Magicka healer. So these are not obviously going to be our primary healing abilities. Netch for the sustain. We have Overflowing Altar for the minor lifesteal that it applies, as well as the Blood Feast synergy. And then this is really kind of a flex spot, but I like to fill it up with Expansive Frost Cloak, which gives you and your allies a major reward and major resolve. So that just really helps out your resistances, helps out your spell ability, so it's always really nice to have there. Then our final ultimate, Breath of Warhorn. You pretty much have to run this as a healer, because it is the strongest support ultimate that you can have in the game right now. So I did mention this is technically a flex spot, but there's not that many abilities that you can really flex with it. So let's see if I can find some of them. So like I said, there's not that many that you can use. So Circle of Protection, any of the 2 morphs is an option here. So you're going to use this more when you're stacked up in execute phases, for example against the Mage, Hircine Archive, or against the Assembly General in Hall of Fabrication. And that's just for the minor protection buff there. One here. There's one more. So Efficient Purge is another one that you might need to run. So there are going to be instances where the fight does have debuffs. So in that instance, you will need to run Purge. This is very expensive to run, especially as a stamina healer. So it is an ability that you must have, but you might not end up using it all that often, but it is nice to have just in case. Those are they're really the only 2 abilities that are kind of flex spots here. Like I said, there's not that many abilities that you can really put here that are all too useful. There are a few in Mundus of Brace that you might want to consider running, but again, a lot of your abilities here all use Magicka, so you're not able to really use them too much because, again, you do want to conserve your Magicka for Comet Prayer and Orbs. So that's why there's, even though you could use like Healing Seed, you could use Living Vines, because they all use Magicka, you don't really want to run them because Comet Prayer and Orbs are going to be more useful for you in the end. So for our CP points, the CP cap is 780, which gives us 250 points across each of the 3 different constellation types. So starting off with our green CPs, we have 75 into Mooncalf, 75 into Nasty. That gives us 110 points remaining, which we can put into the remaining nodes really however you'd like. You can even push Mooncalf into Nasty up to 100 if you want to. I have 40 Shadow Ward, 40 Tumbling, and 30 Warlord. Now for our blue CPs, I will have to reconfigure them real quick. But basically, if you're just purely going to be healing, so you're not really going to be doing anything else, you're not really going to be like guessing on the side, it's going to look like this. It's basically going to be 100 into Precise Strikes and 100 into Blessed. That's the 2 that you must basically max out. Like, we give you 60 additional points, which you can put really wherever you kind of want. So like I would probably put them into something like Piercing and Thaumaturge, so I'd put like 23 into Piercing, then the rest 37 into Thaumaturge. But again, it's kind of up to you. A lot of the blue CPs here are focused in more on DPS, less so on healing. So those 60 points really can be placed wherever you really want. Finally, for our red CPs here, so this particular configuration I have is a more balanced approach, so you're able to get good mitigation across all the pieces of content in the game. If you want to maximize your mitigation for a single piece of content, you will need to shift your points around. So I have 66 into Ironclad, 56 into Thick-Skinned, 64 into Hardy, and Elemental Defender. That gives us 10 remaining points, which we're going to put into Crypt Recovery here in order to get the Field Position passive. This is not necessary at all. You can put the 10 points here back into something like Thick-Skinned in order to get 66 in the Thick-Skinned. But for progression guilds, for more casual raiding guilds, I do recommend picking up Field Position because that damage mitigation that you get while rezzing somebody is pretty nice to have. As a healer, you typically will not be resurrecting. Your job should be healing and people who are rezzing, so that way they don't die. But it's kind of up to you if you want to pick this up or not. I personally don't recommend running it as a healer, but it's just something I do want to point out here. Alright, so that is pretty much it for the build stuff. So now let's talk about the philosophy behind healing. So every healer has their own kind of philosophy, their own sort of approach to healing, so I'm just going to go over my approach to healing. So my approach has always been heal as much as you need to, and then after that it's all about buffing. So you should be kind of support first, and healing is kind of secondary. Healing should be a result of supporting. Basically, it's kind of the philosophy that I take here. So obviously, you want Vigor to be your main heal. So you just want to make sure you're popping that every 5 seconds. It also is your only way of proccing Powerful Assault here. So you just want to make sure you try to hit only DPS with your first hit of Vigor, and after that just make sure you are basically using Vigor every once in a while. So you can see here that there really is no cooldown of Powerful Assault. So that's what I mean when Powerful Assault, when you apply it to somebody, if you don't let it run out, it'll just keep on reapplying it to that person. So you can't like run around the group and apply Powerful Assault to everybody. It'll only reapply itself to those 4 people. If you need a burst heal, go with Soothing Spores, but it's a burst. You shouldn't necessarily be running it as your primary heal. Your primary heal is going to be coming from Vigor, that's going to heal over time, and Green Lotus from all the weaving that you're doing, as well as minor Lifesteal from the Blood Altar. Now, when it comes to Minor Berserk, Comet Prayer, and Orbs, this is fairly difficult to sustain indefinitely, so you can't really just keep on doing it throughout the entire fight. Eventually you will run out of Magicka. So with Comet Prayer, you can use it, and then you're able to run 2 Orbs before the buff runs out. As you can see here, that uses up a lot of Magicka. So if we let our Magicka go all the way back up to 100%, do keep in mind we're not in combat, so our regen is a little bit higher than usual. So if we do Comet Prayer and then 2 Orbs, you can see it drops. We basically use up half of our Magicka. That's even with the Asylum staff buff that reduces the cost of our orbs by 30%. So that's a pretty huge loss there. So another thing that you could do instead of running 2 orbs is just do Common Prayer and 1 orb. So that drops us down to about 60% magicka. And that's something that you could decide to do. Now, you will be running with another healer, normally speaking. So your other healer, if they're a magicka healer, of course, or it can kind of make up for this by throwing out more orbs. A little less fair for them because orbs is still very expensive for them, but because it uses magicka, it's a little bit easier. The other thing too is you can also heavy attack while you're on your back bar. You heavy attack with the rest of staff still restores magicka, so you can do something like Common Prayer or with a heavy attack in order to get your magicka back just up. So that's an option there, because your back bar here as a stamina healer is mainly going to be for buffs, the long buffs. So you can see here, Full Netch, Blood Altar, Connected Rockflow, all of these last 20 seconds, over 20 seconds. So you have time basically to do Common Prayer or do a heavy attack. You can even do something like this. You can do something like Common Prayer. Hold on. Just give me an invalid location. Try it over here. Common Prayer, 2 orbs, and then you can go right into a heavy attack. You can even do 2 heavy attacks. And do Common Prayer and go back to it. Ideally, you're able to maintain Common Prayer, but even in a trial, you're not able to basically use Common Prayer like a cooldown. So Common Prayer has an 8-second cooldown, basically, so the duration lasts for 8 seconds. So you don't have enough magicka regen to really sustain that. So you will have the heavy attack. So my recommendation would be to basically do what I just did there. So you do a Common Prayer, or do a heavy attack maybe, go back to your front bar, Vigor, do what you have to do to heal. Then when you feel comfortable enough, then you can just go back to your back bar, Common Prayer again, do another orb with a heavy attack, something like that. Stamina, like I said, I haven't played stamina healer just because it's my thinking is, why do I want to put more pressure on myself when it's already hard enough to heal very well as a magicka healer? So that's kind of my philosophy there. And then for Bone Surge, you can just use it whenever. If you know the fight, you can use it when you know damage is incoming to your group, so that way you're able to prepare for it, get that major vitality buff on some people, so you're able to get them back up to full health a little bit faster that way. So it's really hard to explain healing and kind of show you guys healing without actually healing something, and that's probably not going to happen with this particular build, just because I don't have a Warden that's able to heal using stamina yet. I do have a stamina Warden, so I might be able to repurpose it into a stamina Warden healer for like a dungeon run, so you guys can see my approach. But that's not on my immediate to-do list. So hopefully I'll be able to get it out, but it's not really on my radar right now. That's it for this video. If you guys have any questions about healing on a stamina Warden, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. I really don't know anybody who heals on a stamina Warden, like on a regular basis, or at least a semi-regular basis. So I will try to reach out to a couple of healers that might know the answers. There are a couple of really good healers that might be able to answer questions, but I wouldn't hold my breath. Stamina healing is a very, very, very niche kind of thing. There's only a handful of people who probably do it on a semi-regular basis. Hope you guys found the video informative, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.